Special effects are just a tool, a means of telling a story. People have a tendency to confuse them as an end to themselves. A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing.
Nothing has changed the landscape of the film industry more in the last 30 years than the advent of CGI in the 80s and early 90s, with films like Tron and Jurassic Park, and then the introduction of VFX animation in the mid-90s, with Pixar's Toy Story, with VFX animation still being the most popular and financially successful form of animation today. They've made films bigger, even more successful, and much more exciting, proving time and time again that they are the biggest moneymakers in Hollywood, with films like Avatar and Jurassic World, two of the highest grossing films of all time, which both rely almost entirely on CGI. However, some argue that the current use of CGI and VFX have somewhat negatively impacted the film industry.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes you get CGI which is blatant and right out there in such films as, say, the Marvel films, which are feature amazing, jaw-dropping special effects. And other times you'll get films like where the special effects are invisible. It might be something like Cafe Society by Woody Allen this year, which is set in the 30s and 50s. I mean, there'll be special effects and CGI in that where they'll make a street look like it's the 1930s or the 1940s, and it's got loads of CGI, but it's not explosions and it's not so blatant. So on one hand, when you think about Woody Allen's film where CGI is heavy, perhaps, I don't know that for sure with Woody Allen's film, I'm just using an example of dressing a street, it could be CGI heavy, but it's not the star of the show. Whereas in something like Marvel, the special effects are quite a big part of being the star of the show. Transformers blowing up cities like Chicago and stuff, it's all CGI and it's all important. But at the end of the day, whether it's invisible effects or really showy visual effects, what really matters is, was it a good film?
It's easy to see, however, that VFX alone isn't what draws the crowds. 2012's John Carter, which contains a plethora of visual effects, bombed at the box office, only making $284 million worldwide on a $250 million budget. What crowds respond to are kids' films, typically Disney, superhero films, and recognisable intellectual properties such as 2014's Maleficent, which made $700 million on a $180 million budget. The fact of the matter is that audiences have evolved and visual effects don't wow audiences anymore unless films do creative things with them. For example, the magic in Marvel's Doctor Strange. But some still believe visual effects are more positive than negative.
It's a very good question, and I think there is no straightforward answer, and fundamentally it's yes and no. It is a help and a hindrance. Used in the right way, it opens amazing doors to be able to create worlds and characters that before the easy use of CGI and the possibility of CGI were as advanced as they are now, were almost impossible to tell. So used in the right way, it's a wonderful world out there that can very much help a filmmaker to tell a story. Used in the wrong way, impressive CGI will never make a film or story better.
Hollywood is suffering a little bit for Marvel films. I think that what we saw in 2016 last year was lots of Marvel film releases, and I think even the public at large, there's a lot of reports on the internet where the public are saying enough Marvel already, let's see money spent on other types of cinema. But studios are studios, they're businesses, they've got to make a return, and whilst those numbers that you quoted there are coming through, studios are going to churn that out like there's no tomorrow. They know it's a hit. But was that action sequence any better than an action sequence that didn't have CGI? No, because we can think of plenty of action sequences in even the Seven Samurai or the Magnificent Seven before CGI was even invented, or even in the film Rambo. I mean, it sounds like a silly thing to talk about, but The film Rambo with Sylvester Stallone in the early 80s had no CGI, lots of explosions, but there were action sequences where he's picking people off in the woods and you don't know where the next shot's going to come from. And it's just brilliant. And it's down to camera positioning, great performance and good storytelling.
Sometimes I feel in films these days that CGI is being used for the sake of it. That they've got the tools and the toys. And therefore they just feel they have to play with them.
I think the use of CGI in modern films, I think, is terrific. It's the effect is so much better than it used to be. I can remember watching films on telly when I was a kid where the special effects were terrible.
Sometimes the drawbacks of like that kind of thing is it takes away the character, so it doesn't look kind of natural. You know, like Maz Kanata in Force Awakens. Yeah. Basically that. And sometimes it distracts away from the story and the action.
Well, I think in both and the television industry, the dumbed down or the kind of kind of impact that CGI is. I don't know whether it's dumbed down. I think CGI. There is a world out there where impressive CGI in the kind of taps into the consumer who likes computer games, where you can dive into quite an impressive and magic worlds, and all these technical abilities can be dazzling and seductive, in a sense that people forget that storytelling at the heart of it is the only thing that will make them fly. So there's definitely a part of the industry, both film and television, that uses CGI to not the right impact for not the right reasons, and that's probably what we then feel is dumbed down. They make a lot of money with a lot of dumbed down films, because there's always an audience for it. But it can also, on the flip side of that coin, enable films to present something for an affordable budget in an affordable time frame where you couldn't have ventured before.
As with many things, whether CGI is positive or negative is completely subjective. It's neither right nor wrong to like or dislike the contemporary use of CGI in cinema. But it's important to consider how it affects cinema now and in the future.